Today is November 10th, 2022, and the last video that I made was about my 7th week pregnancy scare. And unfortunately, this video is about another pregnancy scare that I had during my 12th week. So if you are sensitive to TMI topics regarding blood or miscarriage or potential miscarriage, I would not continue watching this video. So pregnancy is a very, very vulnerable experience, especially during the first trimester when women are at a higher risk for miscarriage. And even though we all don't want to think any negative thoughts during our pregnancy, there is that lingering feeling of just keeping an eye out on your body and just the changes that you're going through, to hopefully not see anything that would indicate miscarriage. And with miscarriage, there's the signs of bleeding and intense pain or cramping that signifies that. But also when you're pregnant, bleeding just happens, and a lot of times there's really no reason for it, or there's no identifiable reason for why that happens. And it's one of those things that I don't know if it's really talked about, because personally, I did not realize how many women that I knew that did bleed during their pregnancy, but went on to have healthy pregnancies. And for myself, when I had my little pregnancy scare at 7 weeks, it really wasn't a lot of bleeding. The bleeding that I experienced was more like spotting, and they didn't really know why, but it stopped. Eventually it stopped and I was fine. But recently, a couple of days ago on voting day, after work, I went to the dentist. I had a dentist appointment, and then I went to vote, and my husband and I went to vote together. And after voting, we went out for dinner to pick up Mexican food to take home. So we stopped by a local restaurant in our neighborhood and ordered our food, sat at the bar talking to the bartender. She was so nice, and we were just kind of talking about our pregnancy and just letting her know we're having a baby, and we were just super excited. My husband tells everyone that we meet that we're having a baby because he's just so excited. And so while we were waiting for our food, I decided I was going to stop and go to the restroom, and I went into the bathroom, started to use the bathroom, and just as I was finishing, I happened to turn and look down and see that there was blood in the toilet, and I was pretty alarmed because what I was seeing wasn't like what I saw during my 7th week. This was dark red, just looked like I was in the middle of my period. And it was very alarming because since my 7th week, everything has just been pretty smooth. I've just been counting down the weeks until I enter my 2nd trimester, and I've been pretty excited about entering my 12th week because it's like I'm getting closer to the 2nd trimester, and I'm just like so excited to be done with the 1st trimester. Not that it's been a negative experience, but I think everyone just has that sigh of relief that happens when you enter your 2nd trimester and you're like, everything's good. Like, I don't have to really be too concerned about miscarriages. So I didn't want to panic. I'm just alarmed, and I cleaned up, went out of the bathroom, walked over to my husband, and I whispered in his ear, "We need to go to the ER. I don't know what's going on. I just went to the bathroom and I was bleeding a lot. Could you just pay for the food? I'm going to go to the car." And I just walked out, went straight to the car, and I immediately Googled emergency room because I actually didn't remember where the emergency room was located. And I wanted to call and make sure that they could do an ultrasound, because that was my only concern. I'm like, I just need to be able to go to the emergency room, get an ultrasound, and know that everything's okay. So my husband hops in the car, and I had the address pulled up. I had spoken to someone, and they said, yeah, I told them what was going on. They said, this is the address, and they gave it to me. However, my husband and I didn't know that there were I didn't know that there were 2 ERs that were like not too many miles away from each other in the closest city. And so as we're driving to the location that I had the address to, my husband was like, "Where are we going? I don't think this is the right way." And he was kind of a little bit panicked because he wanted to just get me there the quickest route and get me to the fastest, closest emergency room possible. And I told him this is where they told me we could go. So he pulls over the car and he's like, "I need to look this up. I need to make sure we're going to the closest one." And he got a different address to another ER that was maybe like a couple minutes closer than the one we were going to. And he was more familiar with that one. He knew that location, which honestly, I wish we would have just stuck with the route we were on originally, because after looking at the Google reviews, the ER that we ended up going to had maybe a 2-star rating, and the one that we should have gone to had a 4-star rating. And our experience probably would have been much better than what we experienced once we got there. So my husband's driving quickly to get us to the ER. We get there, I go in to the front desk, I check in, told them what was going on, and there was already a lot of people there that had checked in and who were waiting to be seen. So we're in the waiting room, just standing there, and I just started praying quietly to myself, and I'm holding my husband's hand, and he's just like trying to comfort me and telling me, he just looks me in the eyes and he says, "It's going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine. It's probably nothing. They're gonna tell us that it's nothing, and it's gonna be okay." And that's what I needed to hear. I just love that my husband is very positive, even in very stressful situations. He always remains calm. He doesn't jump to negative conclusions, and that kind of put my mind at ease. I did already have like this sense of peace that just kind of was just there. Despite the situation, I still felt peace, and I still felt like I'm just gonna trust that God has his hand on our baby, and everything is under his control. But I'm human. I did still feel a little bit of anxiousness about the whole situation, and it was just like I just wanted to hurry up and have an ultrasound so I can know that everything's okay. So we're standing in the waiting room, and I got a little tired of standing, so I sat down on the floor for a little bit, and then I kind of got up and was just in a squatting position on the floor with my back against the wall in this corner of the waiting room. And all of a sudden, I could feel just this gush of blood flowing out of me. Like I could just feel it. And I was like, oh my gosh. Like it was a lot. And I had a panty liner on, but the panty liner was already soaked through from when we were at the restaurant. And it was already soaked through by the time we got there. And I could feel the blood just gushing through to my clothes. Like I could feel it soaking through my pants and dripping down my legs. And we were standing in the waiting room for maybe about a half hour, or even probably longer than that, a half hour, maybe to an hour. I don't really remember, but I rushed over to the front desk and I told the woman, "Listen, I am bleeding through my clothes right now. Is there any way you could get a nurse? This is just so uncomfortable, and I'm really concerned. I don't know what's going on." And she said, "Okay, I'm sorry. Let me see if I can get someone." And she did. A nurse came over, took us into triage room, checked my blood pressure, and then she said, "I'm going to get a room for you where it has the stirrups for your legs. We have to make sure we have one available, and then I'll take you to the room." So like 15 minutes later, she's taking us into this room, and I went into the bathroom, cleaned up. She gave me like a clean pair of these little like hospital underwear, I guess, and then some pads that I could wear. But I had to put on the hospital gown, so I felt like there was no point in me putting on the underwear and the pad if I was going to have to take it off when the doctor got inside the room. So I sat on the hospital bed, and they have like these little blue pads that were just on the bed, and I sat on that, and we waited, and the whole time I was sitting there, I was just bleeding out on this pad. And my husband and I, we were just sitting there, and my husband kept the mood really light, just talking to me and keeping me in conversation and making me laugh and really taking my mind off of how stressful the situation was, because it was very stressful. And he just made sure that I was not feeling stressed. Like I felt really calm just talking to him, and just even the light banter and laughing, I felt fine. And I still had that peace. And we just waited. An hour went by, and I think one of the nurses came in and just to check and see how we were doing. And I told him I was cold, so he brought me a blanket, and I just like laid down on the hospital bed. I was also very hungry, but I completely forgot about the food that we had. We had left it in the car, so we actually probably could have brought the food up to the room so we could have eaten, because I hadn't eaten since noon. And I just laid there, and my husband just kind of rubbed my back and rubbed my head. And we waited and waited, and someone came in, another nurse came in, did some like, drew some blood, and then so the doctor would eventually come in and see us, but they were going to have a nurse come in and check the baby's heartbeat. So maybe an hour or so later, eventually a nurse came in, and she came in with a little Doppler. She was really nice. Had such a like positive attitude. She was very happy, but she actually didn't know why I was there. I thought she knew, and she just started talking to us, and she's like, oh, is this your first? And I'm like, yeah. And she, she asked for my birth date, and I told her my birth date, and she just kind of like turns and looks at me, and she's like, there's no way you're 40. And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, you're 40 and this is your first? And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, I thought you were in your 20s. So we just laughed about it. And she put the gel on my pelvis, and then she tried to use the wand, but for some reason the Doppler didn't work, and she had to leave and get another wand. And then she brought an intern with her and asked if it was okay for him to join, and I'm like, I don't care. So she did the gel again, and then started to use the Doppler wand and was like rubbing it against my pelvis. And she said, we're gonna hear your heartbeat first, which I knew that, and we could hear it. I could hear my heartbeat, and I just had my eyes closed, and I was like clutching my husband's hand, like, just get to the baby's heartbeat. So finally she found it, and you could hear the baby's heartbeat. It sounded good. Like, I just was so relieved when I heard the sound. I'm just like, oh my gosh, the baby is fine. So she left, and she said, someone else is going to come in and check on me, and eventually they'll have the ultrasound tech come and do an ultrasound. And we just waited. I think we waited another couple hours before we even saw the ultrasound nurse. And so we're just sitting there, and I think another nurse came in. We saw so many nurses. Another nurse came in and did a blood pressure. Yes, he checked my blood pressure standing and sitting. And I just looked at him, and I'm like, we've been here for quite a long time. Is anyone going to come in here and do an ultrasound? And then he kind of just looked at me like, I don't think we're doing an ultrasound. And he kind of like started walking towards the door, and he's like, well, I don't know. I don't know if the doctor ordered one or not. I don't think he, and he's like, I don't think he did. And I'm like, why am I here? Like, I know we did hear the baby's heartbeat, but I feel like we should still be doing an ultrasound. So eventually they did send in the ultrasound nurse, and she was a young girl. She went ahead and did the pelvic ultrasound. So the ultrasound I had at 8 weeks was a transvaginal one, and the baby would look like a little alien with a big head. So this was our first time seeing the baby since 8 weeks. And the baby, when we saw the baby on the screen, my husband was just like amazed. I mean, he was like, wow, I cannot believe how much the baby has grown since the last time we saw them. He's like, they have legs and hand, like you could see the legs and the arms, and the baby was moving around a lot, just like moving their legs and like swimming and waving their little hand. And when I saw that, I was so emotional and just so happy. And I'm just like, okay, everything's fine. Why am I bleeding? And the ultrasound nurse, of course, she just does all the pictures and images and gets that to the doctor. And she's like, we'll have to find out. I can't tell you anything, which I understood. I know that she was not going to be able to give me like any results. And so she left, and my husband and I just sat in the room just waiting. I was still bleeding. I was still bleeding the whole time. And I just kept going to the bathroom and cleaning up. And whenever they'd come back, they would switch the pad out. So I think, gosh, we got to the emergency room probably around 7:30, and it was midnight by the time we got very tired of just sitting there. And I'm like, we heard the baby's heartbeat, we've seen the baby, we know everything's okay. It had been like an hour by the time it was midnight since we had done the ultrasound with the nurse. And I just looked at my husband. He was so tired. I felt so bad for him because I'm like, you have to go to work in a couple hours. And we should probably just leave. We should just tell them at the front desk, like, we can't wait any longer. I also had to go to work that morning. And I thought about calling off, but I already knew the baby was fine and I work from home. So I felt like everything should be okay for me to work that day. And I was hungry. I hadn't eaten since noon. And I put my clothes on, told my husband, let's just go. So we went out to the front desk and just said to them, like, hey, we're waiting for these ultrasound results. Is there any way you guys can just call us and let us know what you found? So she kind of like huffed. I know she was a little bit annoyed, and we were being nice. We were not upset at them. We know it's an emergency room. It, for whatever reason, it takes them a long time. There weren't a lot of people in this emergency room, and there were a lot of people in the lobby, but you could tell like it was not a lot going on. And I know a lot of the people that had even come in didn't really have anything that was really emergency, like when they were talking to the nurses and telling them the problems they were having, like cough, sore body. None of them were really emergencies, and you could tell a lot of people probably were hypochondriacs, unfortunately, that they were dealing with. But she just disappeared. Like, she really didn't say much to us. She was like, okay. What room are you? What's your last name? Because we didn't remember our room number. And she's like, well, what's your last name? And we told her, and she asked another nurse, what room are they in? And then she just disappeared. And then the nurse that we had that kept coming in and out of our room, it was a male nurse. She went over to him, and he came out and was like, oh, let me find a doctor that can just give you the results. So he found another doctor, because the doctor that we originally had seen, he told us that he was leaving early. He was leaving, and he would not be the one giving us the results. It would be a different doctor. So this tall doctor comes over, and he seemed annoyed as well. And he's like, let's go into the room. I'll tell you your results. And we get in there, and he's just kind of like no bedside manner. He's like, well, baby's fine. I'm like, okay, we already know that. And we don't really know why you're bleeding, but it could be a number of things. He was like, some women bleed because their placenta is disintegrating, and that can cause them to bleed out and have a miscarriage. And I'm like, is my placenta disintegrating? He's like, that's not your problem. We just don't know. I'm like, why is he telling me this? Like, oh my gosh, like, if my placenta's not disintegrating, don't even say that. I don't know. So he said, but there's really nothing else to tell you except don't lift anything heavy. Do you work out? And I said, yes, I do, but I haven't really been lifting. I've mostly just been doing lower body workouts, lighter weights than I normally would. And I have been working out since before I got pregnant. So he just said, don't lift anything heavier than 5 pounds or 10 pounds. I can't remember. And then he said, we don't have any diet restrictions or anything. So just rest your pelvis. That's what he said. Rest your pelvis. And I'm like, pelvic rest. I don't know what that means. And I didn't even bother to ask him. I just was like, okay, that's fine. As long as we can go. He's like, yeah, you're free to go. And we went ahead and left, and we went home. And that was on Tuesday. And today is Thursday. And I have been still bleeding since Tuesday. Not as heavy. I do have to wear regular pads maxi pads that you'd wear during your period, and I'm having like bleeding as if I'm on my period, but maybe not heavy, not as heavy as it was originally when I was in the ER, but still persistent bleeding, and I don't know why. I did Google to see Just curious, like, if there's some underlying reasons out there. And I mean, there is a reason that's just, who knows what the reason is, basically. Like, some women just bleed and have a sensitive cervix, so I don't know what's going on, and I kind of hope that it stops soon. I don't want to wear maxi pads, honestly. It's just annoying having to feel like I'm on my period, but I'm not. And I don't have any pain. I didn't have any pain at all during the whole time that I was bleeding when it started. So other than that, everything with my 12th week has been fine. I'm 12 weeks and 3 days now. So we're almost getting to our week 3, and we'll soon be in the second trimester. My symptoms have pretty much they've lessened, I guess. I don't really have cramping, much cramping, not as consistently as it was during the earlier part of the trimester. I'll have slight cramping here and there, like just light, or I'll have like a shooting pain, just a shooting pain real quick, nothing awful or serious. And then not as gassy as I was, and the bloating has definitely pretty much almost stopped. And at this point, I think I have a bump now, a small bump that's forming, which I'll show in a little bit, my bump. But I used to wake up with a completely flat stomach, and then after eating throughout the day, by the end of the night, I'd have bloating, and then I'd wake up in the morning, flat stomach, and it was just like this repeated thing every day. And my husband, like a couple weeks ago, he's like, "Oh, I think you're showing." I'm like, "No, babe, it's bloat. I'm bloated," because every morning, and he doesn't see my stomach in the mornings because he goes to work before I get up, and I'm like, if you saw me in the morning, my stomach's completely flat. And I only have a stomach at the end of the day after all the eating and drinking a half gallon of water. So yeah, I wake up and that little bump that's there has not gone away. And I kind of started noticing it at the very beginning of the end of the 11th week. More so the start of the 12th week, I noticed like that bump has not gone away. And I'm excited to see it continue to grow, and just excited for this pregnancy. I'm continuing to pray and confess my confession over our baby, and just thankful that God has been protecting our child, and that this baby is going to be birthed full term. So this is kind of just my little update before I get into the second trimester. I don't think I'm going to, I might do like a final trimester update, though this might just be that video, because really there hasn't been much going on during the pregnancy. Nothing much at all, really. Just waiting and excited to watch my belly grow and get to the third trimester eventually. So I will just continue to make videos just to document this process, mostly for myself, because I know when we get to baby number 2, it's going to be nice to be able to look back and kind of see like what my first pregnancy was like compared to the second one. My husband's already excited about baby number 2, and I'm like, baby number 1 is not even out of the womb yet. I'm like, let's get through parenting and, living with a newborn before we start working on baby number 2. But he's funny. He's like, yeah, he says we're having 3. So he's increased the number of babies we're having to 3. So I just laugh about it. I will have as many babies as God allows me to have. I love it. I love it. Pregnancy, actually I'm really enjoying pregnancy. So I know some women don't. Some of my friends have told me that they were done after 2 kids. One of my friends said she just didn't feel like herself at all, and she didn't like the changes that her body went through with the pregnancy. But I think for me, because before I got pregnant, for almost 10 years, I was vegan. I was on a plant-based diet. I didn't really eat meat or dairy. I became very healthy. I always made sure I was getting enough minerals and nutrients in my diet. So I always had supplemented was getting protein. I was consistently active and working out at the gym, and also was doing aerial dance and pole dance for almost 5 years now. I've stopped taking classes since I found out I was pregnant, but I will resume after the pregnancy. But yeah, so I've been pretty physically active, and I think that has helped to make my pregnancy feel smooth. So I have also been making sure to stay active during the pregnancy. I did see a physical therapist who advised me on some pelvic floor exercises and just gave me tips on when I'm in the gym. I kind of just showed her my full body workouts that I do with weightlifting, weight training, or strength training, and she reviewed it and told me like how to breathe properly to make sure everything is safe, and that actually has been very helpful. I am going to probably implement cardio into my workouts. I really don't do a lot of cardio. I wasn't, because prior to getting pregnant, cardio came from me doing pole and aerial dance. So that in itself was a lot of cardio workout for me. And I don't really like running on a treadmill, but I think I will probably do some cardio workouts from YouTube and kind of incorporate that. Maybe like the dance cardio workouts that I've seen, which those are a lot of fun. So definitely planning to remain active and try to keep a very healthy diet. I will say that diet is a little bit of a struggle since I'm no longer plant-based, on a plant-based diet. I don't know, it's just like, and I still do have like some food aversions that I was having indigestion and a little bit of nausea, which made it difficult for me to even want to eat some mornings. But I do try to keep a really well-balanced diet, make sure I'm getting enough protein, supplement with protein if I'm not eating enough meat, just because I still kind of, some aversions toward meat. I really haven't really eaten any seafood, even though I do like certain seafood like shrimp and different types of fish, but I don't know, I just can't seem to really get into eating any fish, but that's fine. And then red meat, I don't really, not a fan of red meat. You know, my husband and I do have a farmer that we received a butchered cow, part of a butchered cow from, so we do have some like fresh cow meat, and the ground beef is probably the only thing that I really consume from the cow. I don't like the other parts of the cow. And chicken has been something that I'm okay with eating, but lately I've been struggling with eating chicken. I haven't had chicken in about a month now. It's been probably about a month, I want to say. Though the type of chicken that I do crave is fried. I don't know why, like fried chicken, I was craving that. I was craving burgers all of a sudden for a bit. And I don't know, maybe I needed more iron from the burgers, but yeah, otherwise the pregnancy has been great. And I'm praying for all you mothers out there who are expecting, and for mothers who have been struggling and who've experienced miscarriage. I'm definitely praying. God sees you. He knows that you want to be a mom, and your time is coming. Don't stress out. Don't worry. Just let God do things in his timing. It's better to just let it happen and not worry and stress, because I feel like worrying and stressing yourself out, trying to figure out if you're going to be pregnant, if it's going to happen, when is it going to happen, can cause your body to just shut down. I feel like maybe not just fully shut down, but just stress is not good on your body. Stressing and worry, fear, all of those things are just not good, especially when you're trying to get pregnant and when you are pregnant. So that's one thing I've been keeping myself from doing, is allowing myself to have fear. If negative thoughts start to come up, I immediately counter it with scripture. If you're a Christian, you know, if you're not a Christian, I'm not talking to you because you're not a Christian, you wouldn't understand. But for those of you out there who are faith-believing Christians, hold on to the word. Hold on to the word. Don't let negative thoughts into your mind. Don't let fear, don't let worry, don't let any of that in, because it can definitely affect you during your pregnancy, and you don't want that. just keep your trust in the Lord and just know that his plan is the best. And we don't live in a perfect world. We don't have perfect bodies, unfortunately, and things happen that are out of our control, and it's not, miscarriages are never anyone's fault. You didn't do anything wrong, and God will definitely bless you in time. So praying for all of you out there. I will be posting a video sharing my confession that I wrote for my baby that I've been using during the first trimester. And just want to say, God bless you all. Hopefully you can see me in this video, but I did say I was going to show my belly bump, and from the front, like, you can see my hips have gotten wider. I mean, if you don't know me, you wouldn't know that, but yeah, definitely wider hips for sure. And from the side, it's getting there. I mean, it's not big, but it's this little hump has not gone away. Like, usually I'm completely flat here, and not anymore. So I feel like this is where that belly's bump is gonna continue to grow. It just seems to look so small in the video. I feel like when I look in the mirror, it's more noticeable. Oh, I don't know. Now I'm looking at it in the video and I'm like, oh, that doesn't even look like a bump. I'm so small. Oh, but well, I don't know. That's kind of what I'm working with right now. I am only 12 weeks, so I'm probably not as big as maybe some other women can be at 12 weeks, but I will probably do weekly bump pictures, and then I'll maybe post them in my videos. But yeah, I mean, it's really not. Let me see if I see back a little. Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't look as big as it feels like in person, but I don't know. It's getting there. I'm a small woman. I'm 5'3", so I have gained a little bit of weight during this pregnancy, but yeah, that's my belly update. I'll see you next time.